Yesterday, you were an engineer. You had an apartment, a wife, a daughter who called you Papa. Last night, 3 men knocked on your door at 2 a.m. They didn't show a warrant. They didn't need one. This morning you are prisoner number 47291. You don't know where you're going. You don't know for how long. Your wife doesn't know either. Welcome to the Soviet Gulag, 1947, Article 58. Anti-Soviet activity. It can mean almost anything. A joke at work, a foreign surname in your family, a neighbor who wants your room, a colleague who needs someone else to disappear. At the security office, they sit you under a lamp and ask questions they already answered for themselves. You deny everything because innocent people still believe innocence matters. Then the hours stretch, then the nights. Sleep deprivation does the rest. They keep you standing. They keep repeating the same questions until language itself begins to lose shape. Eventually, your signature appears under a confession you did not write. By the end of the process, the state has turned you from a citizen into paperwork. The sentence comes fast, 10 years, sometimes more. The courtroom is a performance, and you are not the audience. The verdict existed before you entered the room. Millions passed through the Gulag system, and at its peak the camps held millions at once. That is what makes this worse. Your suffering is not exceptional. It is administrative, efficient, routine. Your life is destroyed with the emotional weight of a stamp hitting paper. Nobody in the room raises their voice. Nobody needs to. Terror works best when it sounds official. Then comes transport. A Stolypin wagon. 30 men in a space built for far fewer. 1 bucket. Almost no air. No privacy. You travel east for weeks. Bread appears without kindness. Water appears when guards feel like it. Men die in the wagon. Sometimes the bodies stay where they fell because nobody wants to open the doors yet. The smell gets into your clothes, your hair, your memory. By the end of the journey, even your own face in your mind begins to blur. You stop imagining arrival as rescue. You begin to understand that arrival will only be the next version of the same nightmare. You arrive in January, -47. They hand you a padded jacket already worn thin by another body, boots that do not fit, and a number. The number matters more than your name now. Names belong to families and photographs. Numbers belong to systems. Behind the wire and watchtowers, you understand something final. You were not sent here to serve time. You were sent here to be consumed by it. The guards do not need to explain the rules. The landscape does it for them. Snow, timber, smoke, wire, towers, distance in every direction and nowhere to go except further into obedience. Daily life starts before dawn. Roll call in darkness, then work, logging, mining, digging, carrying. Your ration depends on your quota. Meet it, and you eat enough to delay collapse. Miss it, and your ration is cut. But the quota is built for a fed body, and you are starving. So you weaken. Because you weaken, you miss quota. Because you miss quota, you eat less. It is an engineered death spiral. Men are rarely killed in dramatic ways. Most are simply reduced until one morning, a bunk stays still. At first, you notice every death. Then you notice only the ones that happen close to you. Then, even that becomes dangerous, because grief burns energy, and energy is food. Inside the barracks, another hierarchy rules. The thieves take what little still matters. Bread, boots, gloves, a place near the stove. You arrive with the instincts of a civilian, which means you arrive defenseless. If you resist alone, you are beaten. If you complain, you become prey twice. So you learn camp logic. Hide what can be hidden. Sleep with one arm around your shoes. Keep your eyes open and your voice low. Real survivors later wrote about this world exactly as it was. Cold, theft, quotas, humiliation, and slow extinction. Even inside hell, there are layers. The ones at the bottom learn quickly that being correct, decent, or educated offers no protection here. Winter 1947 is especially brutal. Rations shrink, bodies shrink faster, hunger changes the way men look, then move, then think. One prisoner stops speaking, another mutters to someone who is no longer alive. Another folds a blank scrap of paper every night, as if it were a letter from home. The camp starves more than the stomach. It starves memory, language, future. That is why survival sometimes belongs not to the strongest man, but to the one who can preserve one useless human habit a little longer. A joke, a prayer, the memory of a song, the shape of a child's face before sleep. You discover your own method by accident. One evening, while your hands shake too badly to sleep, you start carving tiny chess pieces from bread. It is absurd. That is why it works. Another prisoner notices. and leaves a crumb beside you the next night. Soon you are replaying chess openings in your head while hauling timber through snow. Some men pray, some count, some repeat poems. You hold on to patterns because patterns remind you that your mind still belongs to you. In a place built to reduce you to appetite and fear, any private thought becomes resistance. Even imagination becomes contraband. The worst thing is not the cold, not even the hunger. It is the randomness. A guard can invent attempted escape because he wants your coat. A foreman can move you to a harder brigade because he dislikes your face. A sick man can be accused of sabotage because he dropped a tool. So you build a prisoner's logic. Trust no one fully, show no weakness. Expect nothing, form no attachments. You cannot survive losing. But human beings attach anyway, especially here. A shared crust, a warning whisper, a place near the stove. A man named Mikhail, who once taught literature and now shares bread with you when fever nearly kills you. He becomes the only face in the barracks your body unclenches around. He reminds you that before the camp there were books, classrooms, voices speaking at normal volume, and mornings that did not begin with counting the living. The camp informant system is everywhere. Every barrack has 2 or 3, sometimes more. The NKVD officer calls you in one Tuesday. He offers you extra rations, warmer work assignment, a letter home. In exchange, the names of men in your barrack who talk about escape. You know of one. He's your closest friend here, the only person you trust. He shared his bread with you when you were sick. If you name him, he gets 10 more years, maybe shot. If you refuse, you go to the isolation cell, minus 30 degrees. No food for 3 days. Men don't come back from the 3rd time in isolation. You have 60 seconds to answer. 60 seconds can feel longer than the years that brought you here. You look at the soup, then the paper, then your own hands. This is what the system wanted all along, not just obedience, complicity. Hunger negotiates. Cold edits morality down to its rawest lines. The state does not need every prisoner to become an informer. It only needs every prisoner to understand that he could. Whether you speak or stay silent, something will be broken when you leave the room. The officer waits with the calm patience of a man who has seen this moment hundreds of times. In the Gulag, conscience is just another thing the regime tries to freeze to death. Maybe you survive that room. Maybe Mikhail does not. Maybe you both do for a while, which is not the same thing as being spared. Survival in the Gulag rarely means victory. It means endurance with damage. Stalin dies. Sentences are reviewed. Some prisoners are released. Many return to find strangers in their apartments. Wives remarried. Children grown and distant. The official death toll reaches into the millions, and many believe the real number is higher. Freedom arrives late and calls itself mercy. And even when the gates open, the camp does not release your body all at once. Part of you keeps standing in line forever. Even after release, the camp keeps moving inside you. You wake before dawn. You hide bread without thinking. You flinch at knocks after dark. The state does not apologize. It changes paperwork and moves on. Years later, books and testimony force open what the system tried to bury. The camps, the quotas, the informants, the starvation logic, the transport wagons, the way bureaucracy industrialized suffering while speaking the language of order. You were turned from a husband and father into a replaceable unit of labor and fear. That is what makes it historic. That is what makes it terrifying. The horror was not an accident. It was policy repeated so many times that cruelty began to look like administration. You weren't a criminal. You weren't an enemy. You were just a name on a list that someone needed to fill. The Soviet state turned ordinary people into numbers, and then into nothing. You survived, or you didn't. Either way, the state moved on. It always did.